From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Happy Friday and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, let's take a look at the latest headlines. The United States is reportedly preparing to send heavy-grade bombs to Israel. These weapons were once put on hold by the Biden administration over Israel's military operations in Rafah. The U.S. military carries out reconnaissance flights using drones over the Black Sea. Now, Russia says American drones in the region risk a direct clash with NATO. Members of the United Kingdom's hard-right Reform Party reportedly make racist and homophobic comments against Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Reform Party leader Nigel Farage condemns the offensive language. The roof at an airport in India's capital, New Delhi, collapses, killing one and wounding at least 6. Heavy rainfall submerges several roads and neighborhoods in the Indian capital. And an earthquake registering a 7.2 magnitude hits off the coast of Peru. The South American country's president says no casualties have been reported. We begin in the United States, where President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump went head-to-head in their first debate of the 2024 presidential race. The 90-minute debate with mic cuts and no live audience was held at CNN headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. The debate focused on a wide range of topics, including the economy, foreign policy, immigration, abortion rights, and more. And President Biden wasted no time in criticizing Donald Trump's economic legacy during his term in office. The commander-in-chief said Trump left him an economy that was in free fall. But Donald Trump said everything was, quote, rocking good when he was president.
We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good.
On foreign policy, Donald Trump seized the opportunity to target President Biden over the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan in 2021. He called the withdrawal the most embarrassing day in the history of the United States. However, President Biden clapped back and referred to the claims of Donald Trump labeling the soldiers as suckers. The Democrat invoked the memory of his late son, Beau, who served in Iraq and later died of cancer.
I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
But Donald Trump went on to say that President Biden is leading the country into World War III.
We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
Now, the two presidential nominees also clashed on immigration, which remains a hot-button issue for American voters. President Biden accused Donald Trump of exaggerating the state of the country's immigration crisis, while the Republicans said President Biden had failed to secure the southern border, allowing scores of criminals into the United States. The debate took a heated turn when the topic turned to abortion rights, and the former president tried to shift attention to what he called Democratic extremism. He falsely claimed that Democrats support abortions after babies are born, whereas President Biden called Trump's actions a terrible thing. After the Republican boasted of nominating 3 Supreme Court judges that helped overturn Roe versus Wade. Now the 90-minute debate had moments of stumbles by President Biden, once again raising concerns about his age and fitness for office. In fact, in one instance, the president conflated his administration's COVID response with Medicare, giving Trump the upper hand.
What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24% or 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
The Biden campaign made clear to note that President Biden was in fact battling a cold, which explained his raspy voice. However, that did not stop President Biden from attacking Trump over his hush money conviction and equating the Republicans' morals to that of an alley cat.
The crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star.
Former President Donald Trump also tried to dodge questions about his response to the Capitol Hill attack on January 6th, but President Biden would not let him off the hook.
The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill, and all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted.
Now, with the first debate in the books, both men, in theory, have time to recover from their performances until September, when the second presidential debate is scheduled. Until then, voters have time to decide who they would prefer to be the next president of the United States. And in the Middle East, as voting in the presidential election came to an end, Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced new sanctions targeting Iran in response to its ongoing nuclear activities. Secretary Blinken said, quote, "We remain committed to never letting Iran obtain a nuclear weapon, and we are prepared to use all elements of national power to ensure that outcome," end quote. The sanctions have been imposed on 3 shipping companies based in the United Arab Emirates for allegedly transporting Iranian oil along with 11 associated vessels. These sanctions prohibit any transactions by the companies in the United States dollars and also freezes their assets within the U.S. Washington had previously implemented a comprehensive unilateral ban on the purchase of Iranian oil initiated by former President Donald Trump following the withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal. However, last month, the UN nuclear watchdog cautioned that Iran's nuclear capacities have been expanding.
The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency reports that Iran's total stockpiles of enriched uranium now stand at more than 30 times the JCPOA limit. Iran is growing its stockpile of high enriched uranium to levels unprecedented for a state without a nuclear weapons program. Such activity has no credible civilian justification.
Meanwhile, Iranians cast their ballots in a snap election to replace the late President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash on the 19th of May. Around 61 million Iranians voted in the election, and over 58,000 polling stations were installed across the country. Iran's supreme leader also cast his vote in Tehran and urged the public to turn out in big numbers.
People's turn out with enthusiasm and higher number of voters. This is a definite need for the Islamic Republic.
Public apathy has become pervasive in the Islamic Republic after years of economic woes, mass protests, and political tensions.
My hope is to improve the economic situation, lower the inflation rate, and control exchange rate fluctuations. If this aspect can be improved, I think we can achieve development, especially for the younger generation of Iranians.
Now, the results of the presidential election will be declared 48 hours after the last ballot is counted, and it remains to be seen whether Iranians will pick a reformist leader or another hardliner president like the late Raisi. And now shifting focus to Europe, Germany has introduced a new citizenship law that requires applicants to accept Israel's right to exist. The legislation came into effect on Thursday and is part of a broader overhaul of the country's national criteria. However, it is now being criticized over its implications for free speech and political expression. Berlin says the contentious law has been brought in response to increasing anti-Semitism in Germany. A report last year said that anti-Semitic incidents in Germany rose by an astounding 320% after Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. Now, Germany's new naturalization exam will include questions on anti-Semitism, the right of the state of Israel to exist, and Jewish life in the country. These requirements have raised eyebrows among human rights advocates and legal experts who've accused authorities of infringing on the free speech and free assembly rights of pro-Palestine protesters. All of this comes as tensions among Germans have already been rising because of Israel's war in Gaza and Berlin's strong support of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has reiterated that Israel's security is a matter of national interest. But adding to this complex picture is Germany's Palestinian refugee diaspora. The country is estimated to have 300,000 Palestinians, which is the largest number of Palestinian diaspora in Europe. Critics fear that the new law is part of a broader crackdown on pro-Palestinian activism in Germany. Now, earlier, authorities in Berlin allowed schools to place bans on Palestinian flags and scarves worn by pro-Palestinian activists. And this is not the first time that authorities in Germany have introduced such legislation. In fact, in December, the state of Saxony-Anhalt in eastern Germany also required citizenship applicants to recognize Israel's right to exist. And now moving to China. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has sacked 2 former defense ministers from the Communist Party over corruption charges. The Politburo has launched prosecution proceedings for Li Shangfu and his predecessor, Wei Fenghe. The action follows Xi's anti-corruption campaign within the military's power centers. However, it also poses a risk of instability and a crisis of confidence during a sensitive time in China's foreign relations. Our next report goes into detail.
Behind the walls of the government and military compounds of the Chinese capital, powerful generals have disappeared from public view one after another. While some were subsequently removed from their positions without explanation, others were charged with corruption. So after months of intense public speculation and evasive non-answers from government spokespersons, in the latest, the Chinese Communist Party has removed 2 former defense ministers, Li Shangfu and his predecessor Wei Fenghe, over allegations of corruption and bribery. The decision to remove former Defense Minister Li comes after he was removed from his position in October after only 7 months into his tenure. Since the dismissal report suggests that Li's case has now been sent to military prosecutors, indicating a potential trial that could lead to a life sentence. Additionally, his predecessor Wei is also accused of serious violations of party discipline and the law. An investigation launched last September found that he had accepted a huge amount of money and valuables in bribes and helped others gain improper benefits in personal arrangements. And just like Li, Wei also disappeared from public view for an extended period after he was replaced during a cabinet reshuffle last March. The decisions to strip the ministers of their party membership was approved by the Communist Party's Politburo, and their removal from the Central Committee will be formally announced during the party's third plenum scheduled from July 15th to 18th. Since last year, China's military has undergone a sweeping anti-corruption purge, with at least 7 PLA generals and a handful of aerospace defense industry executives removed from the national legislative body. These removals follow Chinese President Xi Jinping's corruption and disloyalty hallmark, which he pledged while coming to power in 2012. Analysts, however, explain that these purges are a setback for the Chinese leader, who's pumped billions into buying and developing equipment as part of a modernizing drive to build a world-class military by 2050, and also as military tensions in the West Philippine Sea and the Taiwan Straits remain fraught.
And now returning to the United States, some bars and restaurants in New York, Missouri, and Ohio have been stirring the pot by turning away patrons in their early 20s. If you're under 25, you might find yourself left out in the cold. They're denying entry to the Gen Z crowd in an effort to create a more sophisticated and drama-free environment. And this has seen both a wave of applause and backlash from younger adults. Our final report takes you inside.
For some people, age is just a number, but for others, it's a whole different vibe. Age differences can shake things up with varying outlooks, temperaments, lifestyles, and much more. And a few restaurants and bars in the United States believe that age is not just a number. In the states of New York, Missouri, and Ohio, new kinds of age restrictions are becoming a trend. They are now showing millennials of drinking age the door. Specifically, no one under 25 is welcome. Business owners are now fed up with fireball fanatics and beer keg chuggers. They're done with the binge drinking crowd, who are often spotted in flannel shirts, backwards hats, and a mixer permanently glued to their hands. They don't want 21-year-olds who can't hold their liquor, as they often cause chaos and puke in bathrooms. Many believe younger millennials are the ultimate buzzkills. But what is their reasoning behind this ban? They want to cater to a crowd that's more mature and less into obnoxious selfies and endless Snapchat streaks. They aim to offer their refined customers a place where they can unwind with friends who actually know how to behave. The move is a hot topic and has triggered plenty of debates. Some customers are all for the age restrictions. Many spots have thrived since the change, attracting patrons who prefer a night free of potential disruptions. These restaurants have seen a boost in reservations and sales, with guests loving the chill, luxurious vibe. But here's the flip side. A lot of people call this discrimination. They question if age really equals maturity, and if strict door policies are necessary to keep things classy. Some suggest upping the price point instead of the age limit to keep the riffraffs out. Historically, whenever restaurants try to enforce such rules, they get major backlash online. Whether it's the no shirts, no shoes, no service rule, or banning kids to dodge tantrums in food fights, these policies always stir the pot. Experts argue that age-exclusive joints aren't likely to become a trend. Patrons under 30 are a cash cow. The younger crowd loves splurging on drinks and food. And with thin profit margins in food, many restaurants can't afford to lose them. Young professionals, after grinding all week, want to pay for a good time. Cutting out this demographic is a risky move, because at the end of the day, businesses need to bring in the moolah. While age restrictions might create a more sophisticated scene, they risk shutting out a profitable customer base. Balancing the desire for a mature vibe with the need for inclusivity and financial success is a tricky act for business owners.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you right back here next week. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.
Hello and welcome to Fast and Factual on Firstpost, where we get you the top 50 headlines from around the world.